but you failed. He's too strong. Do you really believe that strength has anything to do with whether you win or lose? You will always be weaker. You will always be smaller and at a disadvantage. He is beating you because you are allowing him to define the terms of the contest. You want to win?
A group of assassins emerged from the pitch-black sea. They began moving in to approach a castle on the water. The shadows moved without a sound. They aimed precisely and shot down 2 guards who were keeping watch outside the gate. Javier was about to take a shower when he heard noises coming from outside. Before the assassins could attack, he had already hidden behind the door to strike first. He wrapped a towel around the assassin's neck and slammed him down like a frog. Not wanting to frighten his little daughter, he tried his best to eliminate the enemy as quickly as possible. But very soon, the others discovered that Javier was in the bathroom. He quickly threw a smoke bomb and ran into his daughter's room. Javier signaled to the girl not to make a sound because someone wanted to assassinate them. Because the smoke blurred their vision, the assassins could only grope around in the darkness. This was his home, so Javier knew every corner and rushed out to attack them first to gain the advantage. Having once been a shadow assassin in the same era as John Wick, he easily shot them all down. After that, he and his daughter ran into a secret room behind the bookshelf to escape the pursuit. Javier knew very well that the number of assassins sent would certainly not stop at the few he had just taken down. Moreover, their skills were quite formidable. Otherwise, how could they have gotten past the gatekeeper without making a sound? Suddenly, a few others appeared out of nowhere to block Javier from entering inside. To protect his daughter, he directly engaged them in fierce combat. As soon as he knocked one down, another rushed forward. Although Javier's close combat skills were excellent, human strength has its limits. Before long, he felt exhausted and was overpowered. The little girl inside the bunker only dared to peek out from afar. Seeing her father being harmed by the strangers, she was extremely worried. Then, through the eerie red smoke, a man stepped out. He was the one behind the assassination of Javier and his daughter. Javier looked at the man who had arrived, filled with shock and fury.
We opened our hearts to you. We embraced you. We let you, an outsider, marry a daughter of our clan. And how did you repay this kindness? You took what was not rightfully yours, and now your wife is dead to atone for your transgressions. Did you think that you could just walk away?
It turned out that Kunta was a boss in the Russian assassin network, the same organization as John Wick. However, behind this organization, he also worked under the high table. The death of Javier's wife had also been arranged by this old man. Back when Javier was active in the Russian gang, he had ruined one of Kunta's major operations and caused him heavy losses. That was why he took revenge on Javier to silence him. After that, he forced Javier to reveal where his daughter was hiding. The old man believed that the girl had been told by her father about that mission. So he wanted to kill both father and daughter to clean everything up. Of course, Javier refused to reveal it and was brutally tortured. Furious at his opponent's stubbornness, the man pulled out a gun to threaten him.
You wanted choices. Well, here they are. You kill yourself, and your daughter lives. Or kill me, and you and your daughter die together. Choice is yours.
After all, Javier had once been guided by Kunta since the day he first stepped into the underworld as an assassin. When Javier was about to sacrifice himself to save his daughter, the girl suddenly screamed to stop her father. Taking advantage of the distraction, he immediately shot down the assassins around him. During the fight, unfortunately, he was knocked down by the enemy. When the blade was almost at her father's throat, the girl rushed out, then bravely pulled the trigger to save Javier. This was the first time in Eve's life she had ever used a gun, a turning point that would change her entire life in ways no one could have expected. The father and daughter ran into the safe bunker. After that, he set a time bomb to destroy the building and wipe out all those hiding inside. Unfortunately, Javier was injured during the escape. Just as they reached the gate, the castle exploded. Flames rose high into the sky, burning all the cold-blooded assassins alive. Seeing this, Kunta became enraged and left. Exhausted, Javier quickly collapsed, leaving Eve crying endlessly by his side. After her father's death, the girl was helped by a man named Winston. He was the manager of the Continental Hotel in New York, a place that served clients from the underworld. During the time Javier had been active in the Ruska Roma gang, he had known Winston. Knowing that his friend had passed away and left behind a young daughter, Winston decided to take Eve back to the Ruska Roma. After all, this was her father's second family. At least Eve would no longer feel so lost. The girl was taken to a ballet theater. From the outside, this place looked no different from any other. However, behind the glamorous facade was an old professional Russian assassin organization. They specialized in training ballet dancers into killing machines from a young age. The director of this theater was a powerful woman. In the underworld, people called her Godmother. Knowing that the pain of losing her father had filled Eve with a burning desire for revenge, Godmother invited her to join her ballet troupe. There, girls were harshly trained from childhood to become the strongest in the underworld. Of course, Eve agreed to join the Ruska Roma gang to plan revenge on the one who had killed her parents. Winston was very happy because at last she had found a temporary safe haven. He gave Eve a gold coin with the meaning that the continental New York would welcome her at any time. When Winston left, the woman in charge of the young assassins approached and introduced herself to Eve. It turned out that Nogi and her father had once been fellow disciples when they worked under the assassin organization. Hearing this, Eve was very curious when she listened to Nogi tell stories about her father's childhood. His nickname was the Phantom Assassin, but Javier never harmed innocent people. On the contrary, he even protected them. Time passed quickly. 12 years had gone by since Eve joined the Ruska Roma gang. Now, she had become a professional dancer carrying the tattoo of the clan on her back as a mark of where she belonged. In the grand hall, Godmother was testing Eve's skills after each round of training. Although very tired, her eyes were still full of determination. After that, Eve and her fellow disciples took part in martial arts and shooting training. Here, Nogi required everyone to join in the mission of protecting the person next to them. Two people would become a pair. With her years of refined shooting skills, Eve was extremely proficient. However, due to carelessness, she failed in the first round of the game because she was shot by another team. Next, they took part in the second round, which was hand-to-hand combat. But with her small body, Eve faced failure after failure. In this way, the young assassins had to undergo daily training until they mastered every skill. After a long time of practice, Eve finally mastered all the skills to a superb level. The female supervisor Nogi showed great appreciation for her progress. Now, Eve had become a prominent figure in the Ruska Roma assassin organization. When she discovered that her best friend's bed was empty, Eve immediately ran to ask what had happened. She received only a sympathetic look from Godmother. She explained that since Tatiana did not possess the necessary qualities, the organization had decided to expel her. But with Eve, it was different. Godmother saw her potential as the one who would succeed John Wick. John had once belonged to this place, and now Eve was the one Godmother put her hopes on. She too would achieve extraordinary things like her predecessor. First, she had to go through the final stage of training. A woman who had been beaten black and blue was brought before Eve. It turned out that she too was an assassin, and upon seeing Eve's youthful face, the woman showed contempt. The two sat opposite each other and began assembling their guns. Whoever was slower would lose their life to the other. This time, Eve did not betray Godmother's trust and swiftly defeated the female assassin. From now on, she was officially called an assassin and could go out into the world to practice her trade. That day, she and her fellow disciples had the chance to meet John Wick for the first time in their lives. It was said that he had gotten into trouble with the High Table, so he came to ask for release from the Ruska Roma. Eve stood waiting in a corner as John Wick stepped out. She began asking him about his experience working as an assassin. However, John Wick advised Eve to think carefully, because once stepping onto this path, it was nothing but a swamp, hard to escape from. But someone who had harbored vengeance for years could not so easily let go. Eve received her first mission, which was to protect a wealthy heiress, none other than Korean idol Katla Park. Because Katla Park's father feared that enemies would kidnap his daughter, he paid the Russian gang a huge sum of money to keep her safe. After that, Nogi gave Eve the most advanced 3D printed gun. But to avoid frightening the idol, she was only allowed to use rubber bullets. Once everything was prepared, she changed into a suitable outfit to blend into the bar where Katla Park was partying and dancing inside. Suddenly, she noticed a group of strange men approaching the girl and requested permission to act. Without much thought, Eve rushed downstairs, intending to save the idol. But the men had no intention of stepping aside. Soon, the two sides clashed as the opponents were all tall and strong men. Because of this, she was overpowered in the first rounds. Seeing this, they attacked her with even greater ferocity. She quickly drew her gun and fired rubber bullets to temporarily stop them. Then, one of them lunged from behind and attacked her by surprise, leaving her no chance to react. The others also quickly rushed in, intending to gang up on her. Eve continued to stand up, pulled out an iron rod, and struck the strangers repeatedly. Seeing Katla Park being dragged away, she quickly ran after them. When the man saw how persistent she was, he began to show impatience. His skills were also very high, as just one kick sent a well-trained assassin like her flying quite far. However, the blow was nothing compared to the training she had endured in the organization. She quickly got up, then swung a hammer repeatedly into his stomach and legs. When he tried to resist, she hooked the sharp end into his abdomen, making his face twist in pain. However, this mission did not require killing, so Eve only warned him with a threatening look. After that, she went to Katla Park intending to take her out of there. At that moment, the girl was very frightened and still did not know whether Eve was good or bad, so she stubbornly resisted. But in the end, Eve succeeded in her mission of protecting the daughter of the billionaire boss. Because of this, she earned the right to get the tattoo symbol of the Russian gang. In the blink of an eye, she had been working for 2 months. Every time she eliminated a target, she had the habit of taking a photo to send to the client. For each mission, she was paid a generous amount of money, which made Eve feel that the profession was not so unkind to her. Before leaving, she carefully collected all her weapons to avoid leaving evidence and to ensure the operation had no flaws. Then, she calmly drove away without encountering any obstacles. Suddenly, a speeding car rammed directly into Eve's vehicle. After that, the people inside started shooting. Of course, she did not sit still but returned fire fiercely. An assassin lunged at her, throwing blows that startled Eve. She quickly regained her composure. After knocking the man unconscious with a punch, she swung an axe and finished him off cleanly. Just as she was about to leave, she noticed the scar on his wrist was very suspicious. They were the same as the scars on the hands of the assassins who had come to her house years ago to kill her family. Filled with doubt, Eve took the man's hand back and questioned Godmother about what she suspected. Eve was furious, believing that Godmother had hidden the truth from her for many years. Clearly, she had known which gang had killed her father, yet she had never revealed it.
My child, you do not understand. People with that mark, they have no rules, no consequence, no mercy. They do not interfere with our business, and we do not interfere with theirs. This is a pact as old as the Ruska Roma itself.
If not obeyed, they would be hunted down relentlessly. Although outwardly, Eve agreed to the order not to pursue the traces of this matter any further, in truth, she still could not accept it. The next morning, Eve went to the Continental Hotel in New York to find Winston. Years ago, he was the one who had entrusted her to the organization. Eve approached the reception desk to request a meeting with Winston. At first, Sharon seemed somewhat indifferent, but when he realized she was Javier's daughter, he immediately changed his attitude and welcomed her more warmly. Seeing the girl again after so many years, he was not very surprised, especially when he heard Eve speak of her suspicions about the assassin gang that had once massacred her family. She was certain that he knew something. However, Winston, like Godmother, also warned Eve not to dig deeper, because everyone had to follow the rules. Eve then placed a gold coin on the table. This was the very one he had given her 12 years ago. Seeing this, Winston could no longer refuse. It turned out that the assassins from back then belonged to a cult. They did not view killing merely as business, but also as entertainment. Official assassins like Eve and John Wick had rules to follow, but the cult members were lawless, fearing no power at all. No one knew their exact location, but there was only one way to track them inside this hotel. After all, the Continental welcomed anyone, and its rule was that no violence could be used within its grounds. If violated, one would be stripped of all services and face a global bounty. Winston was also very helpful. He called the assassin news desk to inquire about the identity of a cult member. He believed this man was staying at the Continental Braeger Hotel. The female announcer said his name was Daniel, and that he was wanted for more than $2 million. Once she had the details of this initial lead, Eve quickly arrived at the Continental Braeger in the Czech Republic. In the lobby were other assassins who shared the same target as Eve. They looked at her with wary eyes. A female assassin and her partner outside had already noticed Eve sneaking through a window to climb into Daniel's room. By then, Eve had entered the room, but strangely, she did not see Daniel. Instead, she saw a child with a face full of fear.
You're not here to hurt my daddy, are you?
Hearing this, Eve remembered her own situation 12 years earlier, which had been little different. Before she could respond, Daniel was suddenly standing right behind her. Caught off guard, she had no choice but to raise her hands and surrender without taking action. Without beating around the bush, she went straight to the point, asking him about the cult and why they had wanted to kill her father. Seeing that the newcomer did not seem intent on harming him, Daniel finally lowered his weapon. He also advised Eve not to get involved in this matter. The conversation between the two was spotted by a sniper. He immediately contacted the female assassin inside the lobby. After learning that Eve did not intend to kill Daniel, she called the assassin service and raised Daniel's bounty to $4 million. This news quickly spread throughout the underworld. For ordinary people, $4 million would be more than enough for a lifetime. Because of this, the assassins outside were more eager than ever to hunt Daniel down. Eve did not realize that she had just fallen into a trap set by the female assassin. She had intended to eliminate Daniel and had used Eve as bait. The assassins could not hold back and surrounded the room where Daniel was. However, since he had set up an automatic gun trap, one unlucky assassin was taken down. Eve also stopped another female assassin so that Daniel could escape with his daughter. Seeing this, Lena personally went to scout the situation. Meanwhile, Daniel encountered many other groups. He had no choice but to tell his daughter to hide in a safe spot. Being a veteran assassin, his strength was not weak. After struggling with the assassins for a while, Eve also found the hiding place of the father and daughter. Thanks to the information Daniel provided, she gained a clearer understanding of the current situation. He begged her to protect his daughter, promising to tell Eve how to find her enemy. Although he was a killer without mercy, he loved the girl deeply. Just like Javier, years ago. Seeing the image of her father in him, Eve finally agreed to help Daniel keep Ella safe. When they blended into the crowd, Daniel fired a shot into the air to create chaos. Unfortunately, Lena's assassins still tracked them down in time. Despite trying his best, he was ultimately killed by the enemy assassin. Even Eve did not escape danger, as she was ambushed from behind by Lena. As expected, Lena was an agent sent by Kunta. He also wanted Lena's group to capture Daniel's daughter. The female assassin reported the entire incident, and Eve's presence made her suspicious, so she informed him about it. Meanwhile, Eve was handed over to the manager of the Continental Hotel in Brager. She and the two other assassins had used violence on hotel grounds. However, Eve explained that they had started the fight and that she had not killed anyone. Luckily, the manager believed her and eliminated the other two instead. Next, she went to a shop to buy weapons. Following the old rule, Eve placed a gold coin on the table and asked for information about the cult's tattoo. However, the shop owner did not want to get involved in trouble and refused to answer. Seeing that she could not persuade him, Eve only bought hot weapons to prepare for the coming battle. The guns the shop owner brought out for her to test were the most advanced. They were equipped with armored plating and heat-resistant carbon, causing 10 times the destructive power of ordinary guns. Suddenly, a group of assassins stormed inside to attack them. Eve reacted quickly, hiding in a storage room nearby. She also picked up grenades to give them a big gift. As soon as they showed their faces, they were blown apart. The rest were also dealt with by her, some blown up by mines, others riddled with bullets. At this point, the shop owner, seeing that he had been attacked for no reason, decided not to let the cult run rampant any longer. He revealed to Eve the location of a mountain peak that they frequently visited, surely their secret base. She immediately set off driving toward the snowy mountains. In the midst of the white expanse, there truly existed a small village hidden deep inside. However, her movements were quickly detected by them. The godmother of the Roma gang also called to warn her and advised Eve to give up because the cult was more dangerous than she imagined. This time Eve did not intend to listen, so she directly hung up the phone, which made godmother extremely angry. Then she went into a souvenir shop. This was the same kind of gift she had once received from her father when he was alive. At that moment, a suspicious car stopped in front of the shop. Seeing this, everyone inside grew frightened and left to avoid being caught in danger. As soon as the man saw her, he quickly opened fire. Eve did not back down and returned fire fiercely. After that, she successfully disarmed him. But with his larger size, the burly man easily threw her aside. Yet Eve was extremely agile. She leaped onto him and blinded him by stabbing his eyes. Seeing this, the female clerk called outside for help. It did not take Eve long to finish him off. After that, she ran upstairs to search for more clues. However, the waitress from earlier was not so innocent either. She attacked Eve with a knife, but Eve blocked her. Unfortunately, during the fight, the gun fell into a pile of dishes. Both tried to stop the other from reaching the weapon, but Eve was a step quicker. The woman quickly hid behind a door, only to be locked inside by Eve. It turned out that the customers from before were also not decent people. They carried guns inside to hunt Eve down. She tied a knife to the handle of her gun, creating a new weapon with a creative fighting style. She easily took down close targets and shot those at a distance. Because she was not paying attention, Eve was ambushed from behind by another man. Fortunately, she reacted in time and eliminated them all. After that, she slipped out through the back door of the shop. However, all the commotion had been observed from afar by another man, who immediately called Kunta to report. By now, he was the judge of the cult. All the villagers were his followers. They had been brainwashed, so they were extremely agitated by the presence of an outsider like Eve. Manipulated by Kunta and isolated from the outside world, they believed she had come to harm them. Sadly, she still did not realize this. Only when the entire village began chasing her did Eve hurriedly try to escape. But they too had been trained like killing machines, so even when shot, they still desperately pursued pursued her. With no other choice, she climbed onto the rooftops. However, they were familiar with the terrain and easily spotted her. Although her combat skills were excellent, the difference in numbers was overwhelming. In the end, Eve became exhausted and was captured by the villagers. When she regained consciousness, she found herself tied to a chair in a strange room. Kunta still did not know she was the girl he had hunted years ago. He believed Eve was someone sent by the Ruska Roma to cause trouble, worried that her personal matters might drag Godmother and her comrades into danger. Eve said she had come for another purpose. It was unrelated to the Roma. Hearing this, Kunta assumed she had come to rescue Ella. He revealed that the girl was his granddaughter and would be safe staying there. And Daniel was Kunta's biological son, who had been hunted down by assassins hired by his own father, simply because he fled from the cult. She was extremely furious at the inhumane actions of the old man. Through their final conversation, he finally realized that Eve was Javier's daughter. Even more shocking was when Kunta revealed the truth that Eve was the biological younger sister of the female assassin Lena. She too was astonished, unable to believe what she had just heard. When the two rushed into the room, they saw that Eve had already taken down nearly all of the henchmen. Without hesitation, Lena stepped in to help her younger sister. Taking the opportunity, Eve ran toward the door and escaped outside. The other quickly chased after her. Perhaps Lena wanted to find out whether Kunta's words were true or not. Eve lured the female assassin into a house and suddenly ambushed her from behind. As soon as she looked closely at Eve's face, Lena was overjoyed, instantly recognizing her because of their resemblance. When Eve learned that the one who had hunted her was in fact her only sister in the world, it was almost impossible to believe. In fact, both Lena and Eve had originated from this cult. They had been born in this village many years ago. It was their father who had taken Eve and fled from here. Lena believed that their father's death was deserved because he had betrayed the cult, which caused their mother to pay with her life. However, Lena had been brainwashed by Kunta, so she still insisted that he had tried to save his younger daughter by taking her home. Eve was enraged that her sister had become so foolish from being manipulated. Outside, the house had already been surrounded by Kunta's men. The assassin reported the situation inside, and Kunta immediately ordered his subordinates to kill both of them. He was afraid Lena might learn the truth about the place she had always been loyal to. Immediately, the house was bombed and blown apart. Eve could not dodge in time and was struck in the abdomen by shrapnel. Realizing that her sister was gravely wounded, Eve quickly crawled to her side to help. Only then did Lena realize she had been deceived, but it was too late. She managed to utter a few last words to her sister before passing away. The assassins outside still had not spared them. Eve realized that if she did not act right away, she would face the same death as her sister. Waiting until they entered the house, she grabbed a sword and gave each one a fatal strike. After that, she responded through the radio that she would personally finish Kunta for everything he had done. He was deeply worried, knowing Eve truly intended to do so. Thus, he called her godmother to inform her about Eve's arrival at the cult and her slaughter of its people. To calm Kunta's anger, Godmother agreed to send people to deal with Eve in exchange for preventing a war between the two sides. Of course, this was to his advantage, so Kunta quickly agreed. He did not forget to threaten that if Eve was still alive by midnight, he would retaliate against the Ruska Roma. Seeing this, Nogi begged Godmother to protect Eve because she was family to them. But Godmother still placed the safety of everyone above a single individual. The person she was entrusted to face this time was none other than John Wick. This time, he came to eliminate Eve. Even Kunta, upon seeing John Wick, nodded in satisfaction, because once John acted, the matter would be settled easily. He then announced to the villagers that they were not to interfere, leaving the hunt solely to John Wick. When Eve learned of this, she was terrified, knowing she was no match for John Wick. But when he was about to give her a choice, that he would not kill her if she agreed to give up and leave. She declared she would rather die than forgive the one who had destroyed her entire family. So even in fear, she was determined to fight with everything she had. Although her moves were agile, John Wick was on an entirely different level. Very quickly, Eve was thrown to the ground. But John did not intend to kill her, instead advising her to leave at once. Yet a stubborn person like Eve would never give up. She charged at him to continue the fight. Even after being knocked down again and again, she kept standing up. Eve begged John to let her take revenge, and afterward, whatever punishment the Ruska Roma imposed on her, she would accept. He gave her a deadline. She had until midnight to finish the job. After that, she slipped into Kunta's house. An unlucky assassin had a bomb stuffed into his mouth by Eve and was left dangling at the gate. When Kunta discovered that John Wick had let Eve go, he became enraged. He rallied the villagers to launch a full-scale attack against the outsider. It did not take long before they discovered where she was hiding. Eve quickly eliminated the two who arrived first and took their guns to gun down those outside the door. A larger assassin took advantage of her injuries and kicked her in the stomach, sending her flying back. Soon enough, Eve regained her form and used the sharp blade on her snow boot to kill him. At that moment, the villagers scoured every corner of the streets in search of Eve. She found an underground weapon cache belonging to them. This time, armed with guns, she was ready to fight to the death against the cult's assassins. The assassins continued to hunt her down relentlessly. Seeing that time was running out, Kunta sent his most trusted assassins to the armory to eliminate her. They stormed in aggressively, not knowing that what awaited them was death. Seeing this, the subordinate did not dare underestimate her. He secretly led a few others through a secret tunnel into the armory. But before they could even react, they found themselves surrounded by her alone. From one end, Eve used a flamethrower to burn them all. However, another man quickly fetched a different flamethrower to seek revenge on her. When the two sides came face to face, a fierce battle broke out. Since both sides were using the same weapon, it became a contest of combat wit to see who was worthy of surviving until the end. Suddenly, a group of henchmen rushed in, forcing Eve to spend more time fighting them. Taking advantage of this distraction, the other man also began his ambush. The two struggled back and forth. She was thrown into the wall by him. He was also a skilled assassin. Even when his foot was on fire, he still used it as a weapon to strike at Eve. Luckily, she was wearing protective clothing, so the flames could not burn her body. After that, Eve managed to get outside to search for Kunta and take revenge before the deadline of her deal with John Wick expired. Outside, the villagers on patrol also received news that Eve had escaped and was no longer in the bunker. But before they could react, they were hit by gunfire from behind. With a blank expression, Eve advanced, eliminating them one by one with ruthless precision. Realizing the situation was becoming harder to control, the henchmen advised Kunta to leave the town for his safety. Moreover, since they had lost track of John Wick, it would be much more dangerous if John Wick were to help Eve assassinate him. Hearing this, he took his granddaughter and moved to another place to hide. A henchman was ordered to stop Eve and buy more time. She quickly changed tactics because the man was using a flamethrower, so she countered with a water hose. The assassin did not expect this trick, could neutralize the flamethrower. While Eve thought she was gaining the upper hand, the assassin suddenly struck, catching her off guard. He raised his weapon to finish her on the spot, but John Wick had arrived. With only 4 minutes left before the deadline of his agreement with Eve, John would have to eliminate her. That meant the assassin would have to die for daring to steal his target. By chance, she had been saved by him. Knowing that John Wick was helping her before the time ran out, the assassins immediately moved in to try to take down John Wick. But such nobodies were not worth his concern. With just a few basic moves, they were all dead. Meanwhile, Eve had found Kunta's location. He was sitting with Ella and on his way out of town. Very quickly, she leapt forward to block their path and took down the driver. Kunta also stepped out of the car, but he showed no fear, believing this was his territory. Even if Eve grew wings, she could not escape. Furthermore, the children of the village were destined to become assassins when they grew up. Eve too could not escape such a fate. But before the old man could say more, she fired a shot that brought Kunta down. John Wick saw the entire process, but decided to spare Eve because he saw himself in her. After that, Eve opened the car door to bring Ella out. She reached out her hand to help the girl, just as Winston had once helped her years ago. Finally, John called Godmother to report that the leader had been eliminated and that Eve was still alive. When Godmother learned that Kunta was dead, she no longer feared his revenge and therefore did not pursue Eve's punishment. Surprisingly, Daniel was still alive and receiving treatment at the hospital. Ella joyfully held her father's hand. She was far luckier than Eve because she still had family by her side. But Eve could not escape the bounty placed on her by the assassin service. This time, they put a $5 million price on her head. This was something she had already anticipated. Therefore, Eve was not afraid. She was ready to rush out and face whatever was to come. And so the movie ended. In the end, Eve followed in John Wick's footsteps, acting according to what they had been taught since childhood. Destroy evil and protect the innocent, no matter how close the dangers might be. If you found the movie exciting and engaging, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to follow the next videos.